Hi, cousins. Today I am so proud and happy and excited that I get to talk to one of my oldest and dearest Dark Shadows cousins, Amanda Desiree. I first met her we met face to face in 2004 when I went to my very first Dark Shadows convention. And she's absolutely wonderful. I know you guys are going to love her. Come on, let's head down to the back room at the Blue Whale. There we go. All right. Well, welcome. I am so happy you are here. You are the first Dark Shadows cousin that I met in person, and just, one of my closest friends, and I absolutely love you. And so I'm so happy. So happy, and especially because I don't get to see you very often. Even when you didn't live too far away, I didn't really get to see you very often. So this is nice.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I'm so proud that you have your podcast now. I know you've been talking about doing one for a while. I'm so glad to see that you are, and I love seeing the guests that you brought on. I love hearing everyone talk about their experiences in fandom. The fandom is amazing, and I like seeing it celebrated. So thank you for having me be a part of that.
Well, I just want to say you are actually one of the bravest people that I know, because I have horrible stage fright. I have horrible anxiety. And I have always admired how you can, get up, you can sing a song, you can perform with the Collins Sport players, you can give a speech or a talk on subjects in front of people. I mean, just the various things that you've done that I couldn't do. I no, I couldn't. I could never. And so I just think that isn't so incredible, that you do that. And I'm so proud of you for not letting things hold you back and just going for it and just doing what you want to do. You're a published author. You're a published author. How freaking cool is that? And I know that's something that you've been working on for a long time and wanted for a long time. And when you came out with your first book, I was like, yes, because it was like, yes, I was so happy, and I'm still so happy. And I love your work. I love you have these really cool subjects that you write about. It's not just kind of like your run of the mill kind of everyday, like, oh, I'll just kind of put out this book here, and it's like, that's a book. That's a hell of a book. I mean, when I first read Smithy, I was like, this is awesome. My friend did this. How cool is this? In the Shadow of the Skull. I mean, you were nominated for that, for a Rondo Award,
Yeah.
and I voted for you, and I was like, yes, I'm definitely voting because this is awesome. Just incredible. And the part two to Smithy, which was a Webster. You did the Dark Shadows fan diaries.
Yeah, the bit diaries.
Yes. And that was such a wonderful trip down memory lane, because I'm reading these entries going, I was there. I remember that, and knowing exactly who you're talking about, and just, kind of, remembering the people's screen names that they had on the message boards, because it's been, what, 20 years or something. And I'm going, oh, yeah, that was so-and-so.
Yeah,
And
it was fun going through those old reports, because some people had different handles for each message board. So you might be one name on MSN, a different name on Yahoo, and a different name on Dark Shadows Forum. So I had to standardize, and I would pick one name. And because I got into fandom through the internet, and most of the people that I know now I originally met online, like you were Linda. So I still think of Linda. I still think of a lot of the people that I know personally face to face by their original screen names. So I still associate everybody that way.
Yeah, I mean, that was that was such a wonderful time, you know, because I was getting into the show for the first time too. And so it was wonderful to meet someone, you know, around my own age, because everybody else was kind of so much older than us. And there were
Yeah,
a lot of people who, you know, ran home from school to see it when it was on. And we kind of came in when it was on sci-fi.
that's
Um,
how I found out about it. And it had been on video, but my experience was watching it on the Sci-Fi Channel. Some of the people I know had seen it on local networks. I think it used to run in New Jersey on a public access channel. But yeah, I know it from the Sci-Fi Channel. I can still remember the lineup. It was Forever Night, and then Dark Shadows, and then I think it was Sightings, and one of those news magazine shows about the paranormal.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was fun to follow along in real time with people who were rewatching the show. Some of the message boards would have discussions based on that day's episode or that week's episode, and then when it was no longer available on Sci-Fi Channel, people could only access it at the time through DVD or video. Now it's available on streaming, but some of the message boards they had to choose, where are we going to talk about the show now? Well, let's start with Barnabas. Let's start with 1795, and people could follow along at home with their DVDs, their videos, but it still wasn't the same as having a
Mhm.
broadcast going on every day. So I missed that.
Yeah, you know, I came in during the 1969 haunting of Collinwood story with the ghost of Quentin. So that's where I started. So when a lot of people would kind of make references to things that had happened in the past and talk about these different characters, I had no idea who they were talking about. I don't think there was like anything like a Wikipedia then. We didn't have websites and message boards. So I kind of found out about the show that way. And I'm like, okay, so that's who Vicky is, you know, because I missed all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the Dark Shadows Companion, Catherine Lee Scott's books that has little
Mhm.
summaries, one or two lines about each episode in the back. And I came in fairly early-ish when Julia first arrived at Collinwood. So my first episode where I started watching in sequence was Jason McGuire getting killed. I
Mhm.
used Catherine's Companion to read about the episodes that had come before that, but I tried
Mhm.
very hard not to spoil myself about what was coming up, and couldn't always do that because some of the articles or some of the photos in the book would give things away. But I really enjoyed when the cycle I was watching ended. Sci-Fi started over again with the first episode, so I did get to see those in real time, and I appreciate that because you get a richer feel for the characters, especially for Burke Devlin. I was not really impressed with the character when Anthony Dorton was playing him. He's completely different. When Mitch Ryan is Burke Devlin, and that's really worth seeing. I know a lot of people, they only associate Dark Shadows as the Barnabas years, and I think they tend to overlook the beginning as it's called in the DVDs.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that happened in the beginning that, you know, if you're only kind of focused on Barnabas and the vampire and you know, starting at episode 210, you know, you missed some really cool stuff. There were some wonderful spooky, genuinely
Yeah,
spooky moments, you know, in the show, and you know, the whole Laura the Phoenix storyline, which I know you love, you know, and all of that. I mean, you know, when we see Laura again in 1897, that was my first introduction to her, because I hadn't seen, you know, any of the beginning. I went from
same here.
yeah, I went from 1969 through, you know, onward. And then by the time we got to 1840, they didn't run the show again. And that was the last run. So I didn't get to see all that until it came out like on DVD and streaming and all of that. I'd seen parts and pieces kind of online, but I didn't actually I didn't get to sit down and really watch all of the beginning episodes until it came out on Tubi. Then was able to kind of sit and watch that whole beginning, and then I got like the whole picture because I could see, you know, everything.
So what was your reaction when you finally got to see that? Did you have a different impression of some of the characters because of how they were portrayed in the beginning versus how
I
you would come to see them?
I did, because in 1897, Laura has a lot more kind of mythology around her character. And, you know, I love Egyptian mythology. There was kind of more story there. When we're first introduced to Laura in the beginning, it's kind of ambiguous. You
Yeah.
know, there's so many unanswered questions. Exactly where does the phoenix come from? How did this happen? Did she just, start smoking one day? I don't know,
Yeah, how much does she know up until her death, and where did this other body come from that's sitting in the morgue in Phoenix? Uh,
Mhm.
there was so much that was fresh and new about that storyline, and what was exciting about it was that it really overlapped with traditional soap opera things at the same time. So we're just getting our feet wet. We're not fully Monster Mash yet. There
Mhm.
was still love triangle, her, Burke, and Roger. Not much love lost between her and Roger, but she still she was wanting to get custody of David. But then you have people opening graves and having seances, and oh my goodness, you brought in a real parapsychologist to come and inspect what's
Mhm.
going on. That was a lot of fun, and because the Phoenix didn't have an obvious literary antecedent, it was so fun to see what they were developing for this story. And you're correct that there's not a lot of mythology in her first appearance, whereas she's more associated with great god Ra and in
Mhm.
7 appearances. But I love the atmosphere. I like, personally, I like seeing the show in black and white more than I like seeing it in color. What I kind of wish they had done was keep the present day in black and white and do the flashbacks in color. Would have been more like the Wizard of Oz. But you can
Yeah, that's been
all
really.
the fabrics and designs in the
Mhm.
historic costumes. But yeah, the first Laura is visually fun. It's very atmospheric and it's very creative storytelling. That's why I love it so much.
And I think what's really cool too with that whole beginning segment is some of the characters in town have so much more kind of personality to them. And once Barnabas kind of comes on the scene, it's like that whole kind of small town atmosphere. It's not as rich and developed almost. That kind of goes away in favor of like the more supernatural stuff. But I mean, even like the caretaker at Eagle Hill, when you see him, kind of, and talking about the graves, and Laura Murdoch Stockbridge died by fire, and all of that, and it seems like that kind of got less and less, but I love that whole kind of kooky, spooky, I mean, that was great. That was really great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun seeing Collinsport in the early episodes, seeing the hotel, seeing Burke's room, seeing more of the diner. You're right, it did have more of a feel of a town, and they were able to utilize more of the exterior shots that they made in Essex or in Newport. I miss seeing that once they went to color. So there
Mhm.
were trade-offs. I think Roger and Liz's personalities really suffered later on. They became shadows of themselves as the focus was moved away from their characters. David was quite a piece of work in the beginning. I mean, just because he always had very strong acting skills, but he really shines when he's given mischievous and malevolent things to do. When I first came on, he was playing with Sarah's ghost and sneaking around the old house, but he was more subdued, let's say. He was afraid of Barnabas, so he was always cringing and running to Vicky or Roger. So seeing him um, as a homicidal maniac in the first episodes, trying to kill Roger, locking Vicky in the East Wing. That was a change. That was fun to see.
Mhm. Now, you mentioned David and Sarah. What did you think about Sarah when she came on the scene? Because previously, when you kind of think about the ghosts that had been on, they're either, kind of like, vengeful or mournful, or like Josette, they want to, kind of help the family. And here's this little kid that just kind of shows up, and you don't really kind of know what her deal is. And she was so different from the previous ghosts that had been on. I mean, what did you make of Sarah?
Loved Sarah, and when I started watching, I didn't really connect with the show not until it went back to 1795. There weren't very many characters that I liked. I liked Willie, but he left very quickly. They shipped him off to Wincliffe, framed him for being Maggie's attacker, and shipped him off to Wincliffe. So Sarah was really the only one left that I cared about. She was benevolent. She was very innocent. I mean, she's still a child. She's a ghost, but she still thinks like a child. She wants to play with other children. She tries to be helpful. She has a moral superiority. I don't know if that comes from being a ghost or just because she's still young and and pure and open-minded. But Barnabas and Julia were plotting against Dr. Woodard and scheming, and they weren't very admirable characters at the time. And as I said, Roger and Elizabeth were kind of non-entities. So Sarah was the one that I cared about. And because that was where I entered the show, I hadn't seen The Widows. I hadn't seen much of Josette. Heard about Josette, but I hadn't seen her ghost. So Sarah was my first Dark Shadows ghost. But you're right, she is very distinct from a lot of the other entities we see, like Gerard and Quentin, because she does interact more directly with people. She talks. Josette doesn't always talk. She just cries a lot. Beth's ghost didn't talk when she appeared. Daphne's ghost didn't talk. So Sarah is interesting because she is a more active entity. And apart from the way she's dressed, she does seem to be a normal child. I think Lily and Sam both mistake her for a normal child when they first meet her. So she must have some substance to her. I think that Sam picks her up and puts her on a stool and draws her picture. So she's not just a mist floating through the wall. So that is very interesting. And I think you had talked at one time about how she seems to be more like real ghosts. They don't know that they're dead. They're just looking around. Where's my family? Where's my house? Why does everything look different? I'm interested that they chose that depiction for her. I wonder if that was intentional. They're trying to make her seem like an actual ghost.
Yeah, especially child spirits that I've noticed more so than adults. A lot of times they do not know that they're dead. They're just very confused. They're like, where's, my mom? Where's my dad? Who are you? What's going on? But like children, they're very curious. I mean, even though they're dead children, I mean, they're still, very curious. Well, what does this do? Well, what is that? And so I really appreciated that, with Sarah's character, because having had experience with, child spirits, it's like, this is on point. This is just like how a little girl spirit, would interact with people or would, react to things. Sarah doesn't know a lot of things, or she doesn't remember a lot of things. And I find that's very true with, a few of the spirits that I've come in contact with. They don't know. They don't have answers. They're happy to talk to you, but they don't know what's going on.
I think that made her a very sympathetic character, and I know that they couldn't keep her around forever because Sharon was growing up. But I would have been nice to see her come back, maybe as another relative in one of the past storylines.
Yeah, that would have been really cool if they had somehow worked her character in somewhere, some way. I think that she was a very big part of the family. She was certainly a big part of Barnabas's past. He was very close with his sister. And so you would think that at some point there would have been some sort of callback to that, kind of somewhere, maybe during the Leviathan period when he was so, like evil Barnabas. Where's his little conscience now? Would have been the perfect time for her to kind of pop up. And even, I think that would have been really cool if she kind of popped up and told him, hey, this isn't good. You shouldn't do this. Also, they're lying. They don't have Josette, so don't worry about it and go after them,
Yeah. Well, maybe we're supposed to believe that by that point, Sarah's at peace now. She doesn't come back after Vicky returns, and maybe there's a good reason for that.
Maybe. But but she's certainly one of my favorite ghosts. What other ghosts do you really enjoy? Because you've got a book coming out, Miss Incredible Author over here.
Yeah, I've got a book I'm writing that I have written that is a follow-up to The Turn of the Screw, although it's more heavily influenced by the film The Innocents, and my title is Innocent. So this is going to be about Flora as an adult trying to understand what happened to her at Bly and trying to determine what really happened to her brother Miles. So that will be coming out in September. I really loved The Innocents, not so much the original Turn of the Screw. I love The Innocents, and I really liked the Quentin's ghost haunting. That was a lot. I mean, again, you get to see David being diabolical, and now he's got Amy as a sidekick helping him in his mischief. And Quentin was a malevolent ghost, not at all like Sarah. I like the dichotomy of Quentin, who's trying to hurt the family, and Beth, who's trying to help them. And then going back to 1897 to find out more about who these characters were. Let's see, other ghosts who were interesting on the series. Joanna Mills is another ghost who is more like Sarah in the fact that she's able to participate in the world and have conversations and appear
before.
Yeah. Yeah, are you asking me about my take on Ghosts and Dark Shadows, or my take on ghosts in other media?
Well, your take on Ghosts and Dark Shadows.
Okay. A lot of the Ghosts and Dark Shadows act like harbingers, the widows who cry because somebody's going to die, or Josette appearing because somebody's in danger. She's like the phantom version of Lassie on the show. Or as you said, they're malevolent presences. Gerard as Judah, Zachary, and Quentin. Even Reverend Trask's ghost comes back to cause trouble periodically. I always see Dark Shadows being framed as a vampire show, and I think that's too limiting. It's an ensemble show, and I think the ghosts actually play a bigger role than vampires. Ghosts have been around from the beginning, even from the first episode. They're alluding to ghosts on the show. So I think of it more. It's a catch-all paranormal series, but it's definitely more of a ghost series than a vampire series, I would say. I think was there ever a time period when they didn't have a ghost? Even in the present day, you have Paul Stoddard's ghost during the Leviathan series. Yeah, you kind of get James and Amanda in the watery at the end. So yeah, there was never a time when Dark Shadows was without a ghost. Whether you just heard them or whether you actually saw them on the video. And I've always been fascinated by ghosts. I was reading true ghost stories when I was a kid. I was watching Unsolved Mysteries. So I think I've always just accepted that they were real. And like seeing ghosts have such a significant place in the show. And I like how aspects of ghost hunting are addressed on the show. And when Madame Finley comes in to investigate Quentin, the rules that Stokes sets down, don't tell her what's happening, just let her walk around and form her own conclusions. That's how real paranormal experts operate. Hunter, who was a self-styled ghost hunter who was writing in the 60s and the 70s, had that as his formula too. He'd bring in a psychic, he wouldn't tell her why they were there, and he would let her develop her own opinion, pick up vibrations, or describe what she saw or experienced. So seeing ghosts treated credibly within the context of mid-20th century's understanding of what ghosts are, I appreciated that. I appreciated Dr. Guthrie too, although we didn't see as much of him. So yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah. When I first went to Seaview on my first trip, there wasn't really a lot talked about the ghosts of Seaview or paranormal experiences at that time. People hadn't really said much about it, so I wasn't aware of some of the spirits that were there. And I didn't know that there was a little girl there until she talked to me, and that was kind of like, oh, hello, and she kind of tugged on my shirt and everything. And so, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting with Dark Shadows is the recognition of when people have these experiences and how that is kind of treated differently, because with a lot of the characters, you have people that they don't believe them, like, you're imagining it, or like, Mrs. Johnson and the cottage, and they just kind of think, she's, okay, maybe, need a little rest or something, and she's telling them, I saw a man, and then, but then you have characters that are, coming right out and saying, I saw such and such. And you have, the characters that like, okay, I believe you, let's, let's do this. Or so, I mean, it's kind of interesting how they kind of handle that on Dark Shadows with the different characters. But it's for storytelling purposes, because you would think, if we lived kind of in this Dark Shadows universe, that at some point, anytime anybody saw something, they just go, okay, another one, you know.
That's kind of
But
how X-Files,
I think
everything they
I think that for storytelling purposes, of course, sometimes they do kind of have to, like, be incredulous. No, no, you didn't see that, or
yeah, one would think they would allude to previous encounters. Oh, remember that time Quentin came and harassed us? Maybe it's happening again.
Mhm.
But I used to feel the same way when I'd watch the X-Files, that Agent Scully was always skeptical of everything that Mulder suggested, even after she had seen a multitude of other phenomena that she initially hadn't believed in either. Like, okay, you just saw Toombs squeezing himself into strange places. You saw the leech monster. How can you not believe in this creature that's happening now? But you're right. I think a lot of it is the way the characters are written on Dark Shadows. Like Roger is always poo-pooing the supernatural. But it is interesting who has credibility and who doesn't on the show.
Now, what kind of paranormal moment or experience on the show did you find most credible, that just kind of like, blew your mind, or made you think like, wow?
My favorite paranormal moments. Well, I love the first seance they have where Vicky starts channeling Josette, who at the time was from France.
Mhm.
Actually
Mhm.
French. That was impressive because you would think that the ghosts would still retain their original personality. So as an example, I was in New Orleans a couple of years ago. I did a ghost tour at one of the plantations, and the tour director, she gave us PK meters and told us to
Mhm.
calm down and try to talk to ghosts. And she's demonstrating, but she's calling out to the ghosts in English, and the people who lived in the house would have spoken French.
Mhm.
So I'm walking around, I'm trying to talk to them in French.
Mhm.
I didn't end up having any contact, but I liked that Dark Shadows met the ghosts where they were in that scene.
Mhm.
The scenes during the Quentin haunting, where Madame Finley confronts Quentin, or when Quentin confronts Professor Stokes during the attempted exorcism, he sets the room on fire. That seems to be
Mhm.
something that ghosts and poltergeists do a lot in recorded uh, instances. You see a lot of fires starting.
Mhm.
So that also seemed credible. That seemed impressive. I mean, on the show, the ghosts are a lot more powerful than a ghost would be in reality. I mean, most of the ghosts people see in the real world are actually what is now termed a residual haunting, where it's just
Mhm.
a recording of who was there before. It's not an intelligent entity that can interact with you. So of course, that's more dramatic than that for the series. Um, I think Quinn was probably the most fun ghost because he could do the most things, and he was the bigger threat.
Mhm.
Lock you in your room, burn you down, he can frighten you to death. I don't, even though Gerard was built up as being a more evil ghost capable of destroying Collinwood, I still think Quentin was the more tangible, direct
Mhm.
threat.
Now, in your new book, even though it is on, the turn of the screw, when writing and kind of thinking about what what Flora must have gone through in this house, and the relationships with Peter Quint and all the sort of thing, did any of the two Dark Shadows that were kind of in that mold, the two Dark Shadows characters, kind of have an impression on you when you're writing the Ghosts of Quentin and the Ghosts of Gerard? Did that kind of?
I wouldn't say that Dark Shadows was an influence, although Dark Shadows was my on-head Turn of the Screw. I first learned about Turn of the Screw
Mhm.
on the message board. We're talking about it when the Quentin episodes, the ones that you saw, came.
Mhm.
And oh, this is the Turn of the Screw storyline. what? Yeah, I got to find out what the turn of the screw is. So I was still I ran to my high school library and I checked out the turn of the screw so I could read it and find out what was going on. And the turn of the screw is actually a lot more oblique than Dark Shadows. So I didn't take much from that. I did take some inspiration from Dan Curtis's adaptation of The Turn of the Screw in 1974.
Okay.
Catherine Lee Scott plays the ghost of Miss Jessel in
Mhm.
that series. So there were some aspects of different versions of Turn of the Screw that inspired me that I borrowed from my book.
Mhm.
Without saying too much, Flora, as an adult in my book, doesn't remember a lot of what happened.
Mhm.
She's blocked out what happened, and she was still a very young child during the original series of events. So a lot of the book is about trying to excavate those memories of what happened. So Quint is not as big a presence in this book as he was in Turn of the Screw, but there are definitely some allusions to him and to Miss Jessel in my book.
Very cool. I'm so excited to read it. Is there one piece of Gothic literature or um one book or poem or writing that you wish Dark Shadows had tackled at some point?
And I have to think about that. One of my favorite writers, Edwardian age writer, M.R. James, he was frequently writing about cursed artifacts or cursed books. And the formula for stories is that some uh, teacher or archivist or an antiquarian would go digging and finding this cursed object, and it would unleash an evil ghost or unleash some bad thing. So I would like to have seen more cursed objects on the show, maybe. Maybe bring in more of the antiquarianism or the academic aspect, maybe a storyline that would give Professor Stokes a bigger role because he's my favorite.
Mhm. That's
I think
what I was
Stokes,
going to say.
to everything that he was in, I would have loved to see him featured more prominently in more series. So maybe if he had an antiquarian buddy who dug up the tractate Midoth or a haunted whistle or something from one of M.R. James' stories, that could have been an interesting storyline for the show. But I'd have to think about a more major work that they could have done. I mean, they mined a lot. They mined a lot of disposal and not just the classic literature they were pulling out from pulp literature too by the end. But I've always been interested in the occult investigator or the occult expert, the Dr. Van Helsing type. So I liked Stokes because he knew everything that there was to know about the supernatural, and he wasn't hesitant to confront it. So stories about occult detectives have always interested me. John Silence, John Tunstone. Yeah, a lot of those are fun characters. Seabury Quinn had a long-running detective who was in the mold of Sherlock Holmes. Jules de Grandin, a lot of fascinating adventures that he got into. He was more of a monster hunter than an armchair investigator like the earlier versions of the occult detective. But they're all fun reading. So if a Jules de Grandin type had been a friend of Stokes who came to visit, I think they could have gotten into a lot of trouble together.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that in 1795, because I know that's one of your favorite storylines, do you think if Barnabas had a sort of a Professor Stokes type of character to kind of lead him through his first foray, into vampirism after the curse, that could actually kind of sit down and explain to him kind of, hey, well, this is what I read and this is what I've heard, so you may be experiencing this. Do you think that would have kind of changed how he saw the curse originally and how he kind of originally dealt with being a vampire, if he'd had someone say like Stokes? I know that he had, like, you look at like Matthias Mapes and things like that, but I mean an actual more of like a Stokes type character that could really kind of take him by the hand, kind of sit him down and just kind of like explain explain things to him. Do you think that that maybe would have kind of changed his outlook on becoming the vampire?
Interesting question. I don't know because you're dealing with the question on two levels. You have the academic understanding of vampires. What do vampires do? What's going to happen to me? And then you're having the actual lived experience. So I think the trauma of becoming a vampire, of dying and having to drink blood and being separated from Josette, I think those would have been insurmountable obstacles for him, regardless of how much he knew of what to, as far as getting like a prognosis of what vampirism is going to do for him. Maybe knowing more about it would have made it less of a surprise when he finally discovers that he's compelled to drink blood. He has to bite people, or maybe he could have learned ways to manage the bloodlust instead of actually drinking a prostitute to death. Maybe he could have gone after the local livestock, which he appears to do when he first arrives at Colvin in the 1960s. He could have found other ways to get the blood that he needed without killing anybody. But I don't know that it would have helped him deal with the trauma and the horror of becoming a vampire. I think he probably still would have asked somebody to destroy him, asked his expert friend to do it the way he asked Joshua to kill him, asked Ben to kill him. He just didn't want to be in that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he is, very much the reluctant, vampire. But a lot of his choices that they're of his own making, and he doesn't always make the best decision.
No, be more show if he did.
So I don't know. I think too, Barnabas was just kind of very stubborn, number one, and very kind of set in what he wanted and what he thought he should do. And you would have Julia and Willia and these people would kind of say, Barnabas, that's not a good idea, or maybe you shouldn't do this, and he wouldn't listen when he was just so set on doing whatever the hell he wanted to do, even though it was a really bad idea.
And I wonder how much of that is his character, him being stubborn. Like, would he have refused to listen to reason from anybody, or how much of it is him being a man of his time? He's from the 18th century, even though Barnabas is more enlightened than other people from the 18th century that we saw in 1795. Maybe he doesn't want to listen to the suggestion from a woman or the suggestion from a servant of his. Mm-hmm. But if somebody of his stature had made the suggestion, maybe he would have entertained it a little while longer. Probably still would have done what he wanted in the end, but he might have been a little more respectful of the suggestion. So it is an interesting question, how much of what Barnabas does is his personality, how much of it is him being a vampire. I mean, maybe he can't resist doing the stupid thing the same way he can't resist not biting a beautiful neck that he sees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I'm of the opinion of the theory that, when Barnabas was locked in that coffin all those years, he went nuts, and I think a lot of people feel that way too. And I think anybody would kind of, if they found themselves in the situation where, okay, you can't die, you're stuck there, you can't move, you can't speak, you can't do anything. I mean, of course you're gonna, go crazy, and I think that one of the interesting things on the show is that they gave people these obstacles that, I mean, they weren't like everyday obstacles, but yet somehow they had to kind of overcome it. And you think, well, you can't overcome it without being a little crazy.
We're all a little mad here.
But let's say if you were to find yourself suddenly thrown back into 1795 like Victoria Winters, let's say, here you are sitting out on the patio, and in a blink of an eye, you find yourself in Collinwood of 1795, how would you react to that? I mean, would you have made the same choices that Vicky made? I mean, knowing what you know of the past and, how people may have treated people in the past that they thought were not well or anything like that? I mean, what kind of things do you think you would have done?
Poor Vicky, she was thrown into the past unexpectedly. On other trips to the past, Julia or Barnabas they went in intentionally. They had time to come up with a cover story.
Mm-hmm.
They knew what they were doing, and I think her confusion is evident because she keeps mistaking all the people she sees for people in modern times. I would think that their old-fashioned outfits would be a tell that this is not Joe,
Mm-hmm.
this is not Elizabeth Stoddard. Um, it would be so difficult to conform to the behaviors expected of a woman in the past because they were so much more restrictive than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would try to go along for as long as I could, but still try to find some way out. I think I would try, like Vicky, to help people overcome the tragedies I knew were going to occur. Like she tries to stop Josette from running off with Jeremiah. She tries to warn people about the bad things she knows are going to happen. I don't know how you can do that in a subtle way. She gets pushed back. How do you know that? How would you know that? So unless you present yourself as some kind of visionary who has authority to tell people what's going to happen in the future and what they should do differently, and then you open yourself up to accusations of witchcraft, I think you're going to have difficulty persuading people to listen to your point of view. Yeah, and it would depend also on what time period it was. The 18th century is pretty long ago, pretty primitive. I think I could get along a little better in 1897 if I ended up there.
I think so too.
Yeah, it was a difficult position to be in, and I haven't seen the 1991 series, so I don't know how Joanna Goings Vicky dealt with that. I used to think it would be fun to go back in time, but now that I know more about the importance of modern medicine and modern hygiene, I don't fantasize about it as much.
Mm-hmm.
But the time travel is another aspect of Dark Shadows that I always loved.
Mm-hmm. And you had something to do with what was it, the physics of Dark Shadows?
Yes, I was asked to write an introduction for the Physics of Dark Shadows, a book that tries to apply theories from modern physics, quantum physics, to storylines about time travel to show how these things could actually happen. I mostly wrote about Professor Stokes, and my favorite character, and how he's often the voice of reason, the person expounding these theories that are later discussed in the book, trying to impose some sense of organization to the phenomena that's occurring at Collinwood, trying to identify it, trying to explain it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that you said that Professor Stokes is your favorite character. Is he your favorite? Also, your favorite Thayer David character, or just favorite character overall?
Favorite character, favorite Thayer David character. Thayer David's also my favorite actor on the show. He's very recognizable from his appearance, so he didn't disappear into characters as readily as say Jerry Lacey could do. But he still managed to make each character very distinct. Even the characters that he doesn't play for very long. I think he has 2 episodes as Mordecai Grimes in 1840, but he speaks in a New England accent. He has a way that he stands and moves that's very different from his other characters. And even though he had been playing elderly Ben Stokes a few episodes ago, you can definitely tell Mordecai is not Ben Stokes because he's able to create this separate personality, this separate character in even just a short time. So I admire how different his characters were. He was Sandor the Gypsy, he was Ben the unlettered servant, he's the erudite Professor Stokes, he's the sinister Count Petofi. So many great things he gets to do.
Mm-hmm. He's one character I could see with like a spinoff, the adventures of, Professor Stokes. And, I think that would have been really cool, because we don't really know a lot about him. We don't know a whole lot about where he's been and what he's done. We know he has all of this knowledge, and, he's very interested in learning about things, and he knows a lot about things that the other characters don't know, but, kind of makes you wonder, where did he get that information? Where did he get that knowledge? How did he, find out about whatever it is?
Yeah, specializing in the occult is not a very lucrative career prospect. So how did he get involved in that? I would wonder, did he have some experience in his youth that set him on this path, trying to find out more about paranormal, or was he just a nosy person, a curious person? He does seem to know a lot about everything, not just the occult specialty. So I always admired the range of knowledge that he had, but I also admired his witticisms. He says some very sarcastic things to some of the people in town that he can get away with. Barnabas came to him in a panic after Vicky was sucked back in time, and he says, "What do you want me to do? Do I look like a time travel agent?" Yeah.
What what do what do you think happened to Adam?
Well, I hope that he gave Adam enough of a foundation to go get a real education in the world, to see more of the world. First, you have to fix his scars. But I think Adam also had an appetite for learning. I'd like to think of him traveling the world, meeting different people, and sucking up all that he can from the world. And maybe in some far-flung place, or maybe not so far-flung, he can find more acceptance than he did in Collinsport.
Yeah.
I don't see him down for a 9-to-5 job in a gray flannel suit, but I hope that he found some happiness somewhere.
I hope so too, and I think that, since Professor Stokes is that mentor, that teacher character, and he's a very compassionate character, and you got the sense that, after the everything with, Nicholas Blair and all of that, it's like, okay, Adam finally has this good solid, foundation. He can actually learn things now. He can learn about the world. He can learn about himself. He can become a more of a full-fledged human being, and he's not just kind of seen as this object and the kind of a means to an end for this evil plan.
Yeah, although I did wonder what Stokes wanted from adopting Adam in the beginning. Because Professor Stokes is still a fairly new character at the time, I didn't know what his agenda was a lot of the time. I didn't know why is he taking on this project? Does he also have an end goal in mind? Is he going to present Adam as his achievement? Look, I taught this person who was born as an infant in a fully adult body, and look at all the things I've done. Or is he just helping him to be helpful? Because he's a teacher and he's got the perfect student, the perfect tabula rasa here. So I liked seeing the balance between those characters. I mean, Stokes is the angel on the shoulder, Blair is the devil on the shoulder, and poor Adam is torn in between the two of them. Yeah, because when Stokes first came on the show, he came on through Cassandra, Angelique in disguise. He was her professor. So the fact that he's approaching the family through Cassandra, and the fact that he's a descendant of Ben Stokes, who was Angelique's thrall, at one point made me wonder if Stokes was secretly an agent for Angelique. But that turned out to be not the case at all. He defies her very memorably during the Dream Curse, and he definitely sets up his own position within Collinsport, within the series. It seemed toward the end that the writers are trying to make him more part of the core cast, and not just somebody that Barnabas and Julia ran to when they needed help, but maybe he would actually be in on their adventures from the ground up. And I would like to see that if the show continued on to future storylines, that it's not just the Barnabas and Julia show, the Barnabas, Julia, and Stokes show.
Yeah. I think what was great with Professor Stokes is he even though we didn't know a whole lot about him, he was actually a very well-rounded character. He was very kind of like fully fleshed. It wasn't, except for the whole name snafu with, Timothy and Elliot and T. Stokes. I mean, except for that, you know. And you also kind of get the sense that he was like the almost like the anti Nicholas Blair, you know, but he Stokes is a character that I think he was very powerful in his own way, and he could have easily gone to the dark side. I mean, he could have, you know, possibly ended up a villain if, you know, there had been circumstances that had kind of, you know, driven him to that. But, you know, he chose to use his knowledge and everything kind of for good and to help the family, you know, and you do kind of see where, you know, that character, you know, could have been kind of ambiguous, like is he good, is he bad, is he playing both sides of the fence? But no, he's one of the good guys, you know, and he's one that you root for and that you like to see with Julia and Barnabas, you know, because that feels very wholesome and heroic in a way, even with all of Barnabas's faults and everything. It's like, okay, no, you've got this good guy on his side, so it's going to be okay. Like they make a good team.
Yes, yes. And it's true that Stokes was definitely an ally of the forces of good,
Mm-hmm.
but he is his own person. He's one of the few people who actually has a day job. He's a professor at school. So when he's not running around helping the family chase ghosts and talking about alternate dimensions, he's doing his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Get to see him at home, reading his book, drinking his sherry, hoping that the visitor at the door will leave him alone so he can continue with his hobbies. I do appreciate that. You're right. We did see him as a more well-rounded figure than some of the people who have been on the show. That his focus was not just to clean up trouble at Collinwood. That he had his own life and a mysterious background we don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't thought until you mentioned just now how he could have been swayed to the dark side, which we see happen in 1970. The parallel.
My next question: what do you think of Parallel Time Stokes?
Yeah. So he was somebody who used the power of dark side. He's also somebody who's not as successful as our Professor Stokes. He's an alcoholic. We don't know what he does for a living. I don't think he's a professor. I don't remember what they said his job was, or if he had one. He was very dissolute and dabbling in dark magics. So as far as Thayer Davis characters rank, parallel Timothy Stokes is low on the list. I don't find him as interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like seeing how in Parallel Time some people were the complete opposite of the characters we know and love, as Stokes was, and others were maybe not the opposite pole, but they had a very different lifestyle. Like Will Loomis, he was an author. Can't imagine Willie Loomis doing that. But it wasn't like Will Loomis was evil and Willie Loomis is good. They're just, they've got their own trajectories.
Mm-hmm.
So although I know people who didn't care for Parallel Time, I thought it was fascinating to see people in modern times playing very different roles.
Mm-hmm. Who is your favorite villain on the show?
For being the biggest monster of all time, I would say Gregory Trask. He's so loathsome in his interactions with Rachel. It just makes my skin crawl because you can see how he's openly lusting after her, and that's very disturbing. But
Yeah.
greedy, he was murderous, he abused children. What's not to hate?
Mm-hmm.
But Lacey was really good in that role. He's taking it seriously. He's having a good time with it. So as for the villain I love to hate, I'll say Gregory Trask.
Mm-hmm.
For the villains I actually liked, Laura Collins, I think she gets more criticism than she deserves because part of her function as a Phoenix is to also kill children, but she doesn't do it in a malicious way.
Mm-hmm.
She does it to continue her existence, just like Barnabas has to drink blood in order to survive. She has to take her children to the fire in order to be reincarnated as a Phoenix. And I liked her style. My first exposure to Laura, as I said earlier, was in 1897. And what's one of the things she does? She burns down Gregory Trask's school.
Mm-hmm.
In her in a kind of a cat fight with Angelique because I'm not And even though Angelique prevailed over her eventually, I liked seeing Laura give her a run for her money.
I love that.
And Diana Millay was a very classy figure in both of those storylines, 1966 and 1897. She's fun to watch. She's a villain that I can sympathize with. So as far as villains that I don't hate, that I like, the Phoenix.
Very cool. Do you think that Laura actually loved David, or do you think that she saw him as a means to an end?
She loved him. I think we certainly see more of that in the 1966 story. She doesn't interact very much with Jameson and Nora in 1897. So there I can see that she's treating them more as objects to fulfill her needs. But I think she cared for David, and I think on some level she thought she was doing a good thing for him by also giving him immortality, or maybe saving him from the evils of adulthood by taking him in his more innocent childlike state, although David wasn't ever very innocent as far as we saw.
What do you think of the two original movies, House of Dark Shadows and Night of Dark Shadows? Because with House of Dark Shadows, it's almost like another parallel time in a way. And I know that you said that, you weren't that big on parallel time, but what did you think of House of Dark Shadows?
I'm not a fan of any of the movies. I did House of Dark Shadows, not just because what happens to Professor Stokes in that movie, but because the characters were so different from the people that we saw, and not intentionally different the way that the parallel time family was. When I watched the movies for the first time, I had thought they were going to be a continuation of the series. I waited until I got to the end before I watched them. Star Trek movies are continuations of the Star Trek series. I thought the Dark Shadows movies were going to be continuations of the series. I didn't know anything about them, so I was disappointed to watch House of Dark Shadows and see it's just a bloodier, more superficial version of Barnabas coming out of the coffin. I like Night of Dark Shadows more because to me at the time it seemed like a more original idea. Sometime later I saw the film The Haunted Palace and I realized that it was very heavily from that movie.
Yeah.
But I like Night of Dark Shadows more because it's a more of a standalone ghost story. And I hope that we get to see the full version, restored version sometime. I know we've been teased with that for a couple of decades now. And I know that there are some very diligent fans who are working to bring that to fruition. So fingers crossed.
I hope so. I prefer Night of Dark Shadows to House of Dark Shadows as well for the story and the characters, and just because it wasn't kind of blowing my mind with a different version of the family like House of Dark Shadows did, because it was like extreme, and all of the blood and all the vampires and everything. It was just so totally different. And Night of Dark Shadows, I thought just was creepier, and it didn't have all the kind of the blood and everything, but it was that story that kind of made it creepier. Like in the film The Haunting, which I absolutely love. It's what you don't see that's so scary. And I like it when films have that kind of feel to them, that it's like you don't have to go out with, crazy special effects. You don't need a lot of blood and gore, to be scary.
Yes, so having original characters, I think also made it more difficult. So you don't have the inherent pushback. This is not our Carolyn. This is not our Barnabas. You've got fresh characters. You've got Tracy and Charles. It's been a while since I've seen Quentin, and Charles is the original ancestor. Yes, so I think that made it easier. Atmospheric, definitely. I like the use of the Joanna song. The motif throughout the film makes it more haunting. Having good music in a spooky movie really enhances it. It's just like The Innocents has the little song running through the background.
When I saw the Innocents at Seaview with Guy, it was storming out, and it was probably like around midnight or later. It was like early in the morning, I think, and it was dark. The house was quiet. There was a storm outside, and it was me and Guy, and I think maybe Marge and maybe one or two other people. I don't remember who all was there. I know it was me and Guy. I know that. And when we watched The Innocents, at Seaview, in the dark, and like it, and that was the most incredible feeling to watch a film like that in a location like that, that was just so, so, so cool.
That
You
was
know.
bird offering at the house during a very serious storm.
Mhm.
Windows are rattling periodically. You can't hear what's happening. Windows are rattling so much. I would have liked to see a black and white film more. I think that would have been even spookier in that atmosphere.
Mhm.
But I wasn't always around when they were showing movies. I know um, they showed The Ghost and Mr. Limpet. I think they showed Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I don't know if they ever showed The Haunting. I think they showed The Uninvited. So I missed out on those. I missed out on seeing The Innocents. It sounded like it was a very memorable time. I'm glad you got to have that experience.
That was cool. That was so, so cool.
So good to see a good haunted house movie at the house.
Mhm.
The depiction of the creepy mansion, and then you walk out into the hallway, and it's just as creepy out there.
Mhm.
Green.
What do you think were some of the creepiest scenes on Dark Shadows?
The 1995 storyline was really creepy because of the destruction of Collingwood, for one thing. They come out of the East Wing and everything's destroyed, and the foyer is overgrown with trees. So seeing that was disturbing and frightening. But also they use a lot of interesting camera angles during those episodes. There are times when Julia's walking down the hall and the camera's looking at her from an angle. So everything is topsy-turvy. It gives you a sense of being disoriented, just like she's disoriented in this new time, in this destroyed landscape. During the Quentin storyline, the episode where Stokes is trying to exorcise Quentin's ghost, and then the children are in another room panicking.
Mm-hmm.
That was very, very eerie and very spooky. The first seance, as I mentioned, where they're trying to contact Josette's ghost, and Vicky channels the spirit of Josette. I did take French in high school, so I understand what she was saying, and it was very ominous. So I loved all of those scenes.
Now, you mentioned music a few minutes ago, and Dark Shadows had this wonderful music, and it's so recognizable because you can watch a Dan Curtis film and there's a Bob Covert theme playing. That's who it is. That's what it is, and it's just so like recognizable, and it sets the tone so well.
Yes, yes. I think the Shadows of the Night Quentin's theme is probably the most iconic after the opening theme song.
Mm-hmm.
Used so frequently, but also at the time the show was first airing, it was a popular record on its own. I think it was a top-selling single for a few weeks. So that the music is terrific. And I don't listen to the soundtrack album as often. I used to be when we had regular conventions every year in the lead up to the conventions, I'd play my Dark Shadows CDs to get in the mood. So I haven't done that in a while, but the music is a lot of fun. It's the sound cues that I recognize most often in the non-Dark Shadows productions, like the dun dun dun. You know that's Bob Covert too. And Josette's music box, although I'm gonna be traitorous right now and say that I actually preferred the first version of the music box. They changed it after a few episodes. I think the first music box theme was not a Bob Covert composition. He modified it, probably for copyright reasons. But I was a little bit more attached to the first version of the box.
What got you into doing folk songs at the conventions?
I had been fond of parodies for a long time. When I was a kid, we had some CDs by Bob Rivers called Twisted Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Very politically correct versions of Christmas carols. Also, during the O.J. Simpson trial, somebody came out with a CD called The Trial of the Century. They were mostly public domain songs like Won't You Come Home, Bill Bailey, and Oh, Susanna, but they were about different personalities involved in the trial, and one of the local radio stations would play songs from that CD, so that was a lot of fun. So I've always liked a good parody. And when I went to the 2001 convention in New York, that was the first time I saw the costume gala, which I had thought it was just going to be a fashion show. People were showing off their costumes. One of my friends was in costume. He was going to be in the event. So I went to support him. And during the show, there were some people who did song parodies, which I didn't know was part of the gala. And I loved that. I loved how they condensed ideas from the show, characters from the show, or storylines from the show in these funny verses. One of the performers, he was dressed as Chris Jennings. He had werewolf face and a torn shirt, and he was singing an REM song, "Man on the Moon." But he was singing about being a slave to the moon. Eileen Lynch Farrar came on in a wedding dress, and she was Maggie being torn between Maggie and Josette, and she's saying from West Side Story, "When you're a jet, you're a jet. When you're a Josette, you stay Josette." That was so brilliant, and I thought, this is great. Oh, I wish I could do that. You know, over the next year, I thought, well, if I were to do a song parody, what would I do? And what gets me going is usually a chorus or a phrase from a song, and then I have to build out onto it. So the first song that I did, I took the Everly Brothers' "Dream, Dream, Dream," and I made it a song about the dream curse. So what are the important things about the dream curse to mention? That it goes on and on, you can't escape from it, you have to tell somebody. Eventually, I did come up with enough verses for a song, and I decided that I would enter the costume gala, 2002 festival in Anaheim, and I'm not a singer. I've actually been told that I have a bad singing voice, and I own that. But in spite of that, I decided to do the gala and sing my song. I was completely expecting to fall on my face. I thought if I can creep off stage without any tomato dripping off me, it will be a success. Even when we were lined up in the green room prior to going out, I was still thinking about withdrawing my application, and some of the other people who were there. Monique and Sandra were trying to calm me down. It'll be okay, it'll be okay, it'll be fine. And I went on stage, and I did not get pelted with tomatoes, and I did not fall on my face. People started laughing in the right places, and I realized they're enjoying this. And it was a wonderful experience that people enjoyed something that I wrote. I hadn't thought of myself as a funny person up to that point, but I managed to pull it off in that performance. And some people asked me afterward, well, what are you going to do next year? Next year? I don't know. I have to come up with something else now. So it was kind of a race every year to come up with a new song idea and finish the song before the festival. But I managed to do it for a few years, and I'm hoping to be able to perform again. There is supposed to be a gala of some kind at the upcoming convention at the end of July, beginning of August. So I hope to get to sing something there too.
Well, I mean, you've been a huge inspiration for me. Because I hadn't even thought about writing Dark Shadows music until a few years ago. And I thought, well, you know, I love what you've done, and you know, you make them so like effortlessly funny and so spot on. And it's like, okay, well, if Amanda can do this, I can try to do this, you know? So that's what I did, you know? So I thought about that. And the first kind of few that I did were kind of in that funny, kind of humorous vein. And then I've done a lot more like serious ones, but there are a few that will have these kind of funny moments or like these comedic lines. And I think about you when I do it, you know? You know, but I mean, just you know, that's one reason kind of why I wanted to put some Dark Shadows music out there, is because seeing you perform these songs and how much people enjoy them, it's like, I would love for somebody to sing a song that I wrote about Dark Shadows in front of a bunch of Dark Shadows fans. That would be like the dream right there. That would be so cool. And you know, I don't think you realize how many people that you've inspired. When you did the Hey Vicky parody, people lost their shit. I mean, they did. It was hysterical, and people were going, why didn't we think about this? This is perfect, this is great, you know. And you could just see it got like the wheels turning for people, and they're like, I could do this, I should do something like this, you know. Where do I sign up, what do I do? And it was like a huge inspiration, and people loved it, and they still love it. And that's why I put it on the first episode of this podcast when you sent me videos. I'm like, okay, I gotta start off with this one because this is the one that people are still talking about. I mean, still, I run into people and they go, "Do you remember when Amanda did that Vicky song?" And it was like, "Yeah."
Thank you. Well, thank you for saying that. I've inspired you. I've heard your music. It's wonderful. You have a much broader vision than I have. I couldn't write anything original. I can't write music. I don't think I could come up with an original song. I have to have the skeleton of the original song to work off of. So I'm so impressed that you've done so much. Like a rock opera style retelling of Barnabas kidnapping Maggie. That's amazing. I hope that maybe someday you'll get up the nerve to perform one of your songs at a convention. I know you said earlier I couldn't do a thing like that, but I bet you probably thought you couldn't ever have a podcast either. So I think in a few years I'm going to be elbowing you saying, "Hey, remember when you said you'd never be able to get on stage? Well, you just knocked it out of the park."
I don't know. We'll see because I sang one of my songs on here and I made sure I pre-recorded that because there was like there's no way I'm gonna sit here and do that live. I'm gonna screw it up. I'm gonna cry or something. I can't do it. So I recorded it. And then there were a few that I've wanted to do since then. It's like I don't know. I don't know if I could do that. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, you've been such an inspiration, to me, to other people, to Judy. She had mentioned to me that she loved your folk songs. The last night I was with her at Seaview on her last trip. She had written a folk song called "Good Morning Collinsport," and it was for Good Morning. Remember that for Good Morning Baltimore? And so we were sitting in the what was it, the West Wing or whatever it was where we were staying, and she's sitting there. And she had this notebook and she had it written in purple pen and she's singing it to me. And she's telling me about it. I'm going, "That's great. That's great." And it was awesome. And she goes, "Yeah, I love how Amanda can just get up and she does these and they're so wonderful." And she had done a few of them at that point. She hadn't done a whole lot, but she did say that you were so inspirational to her and getting up and doing that. And it's like, okay, yeah, I should do this. I should do more of this. I should get up and I should do this. Because at that point she hadn't done a whole lot of them. She did
The Preschool Dropout parody league.
Mm-hmm. And she did it was called the Flying Toaster Song, but it was Destination Collinsport. And she did that one in Hollywood with Lolly. And they and I think Diane was going to do it with them too. And they wanted me to do it. And I almost did it and I chickened out at the last minute because it was going to be the four of us. And I think for some reason Diane couldn't do it because I think she was doing the skit or something. I don't know. But I chickened out. And so just the two of them went up and did it. But yeah, I wish I had video of that. That was awesome.
She got the audience to sing along. If it wasn't at the festival, I think she also did it at one of the Seaview parties. I remember everybody singing the chorus along with her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she did her play, her pirate play, A Pirate's Main Treasure.
Yes.
I wish I
was in that. She did that at the 2010 festival, and then she did it again one of the Halloween parties at Seaview. I got Naomi, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Did you always kind of have the acting bug? Did you always want to, kind of get up and perform?
I guess I've kind of been a show off. Can I say that? I went to a performing arts elementary school, so there was a big school play at the end of the year, and a lot of people were encouraged to be in it. We had chorus, we had dance, we had drama. So I did do the drama class for a couple of years. I never wanted to be an actress, though. They had, I guess, scouts who went to the schools. One of my friends was actually tapped to audition for Claudia in the Interview with the Vampire, which she didn't get, unfortunately. And I was given information about a Michael J. Fox movie called Life with Mikey. I was invited to audition for that, but I didn't want to, and I think my parents were kind of annoyed about that. But I do it for fun. I don't think of it as a career prospect, but I guess I do like getting in front of people. I like entertaining them. I like making them laugh. It's makes me very happy to hear that people like the songs, that they remember the songs fondly. From time to time, people will come to me at an event and they'll remember a performance I did in the past, whether it was for the college sport players or whether it was a song that I did. And that feels good that I was able to brighten somebody's day for a little while. So I guess I had exposure to acting, but it wasn't really a calling.
Yeah. I love the Collinsport players, and you know, I've said it before that I mean the Collinsport players are like the heartbeat of the conventions. They really are. A lot of people think it's all about the actors. It's like no, it's about the fans, and it's about the ones that kind of bring you together and bring you in and make you laugh and entertain you and make you remember why you love this show so much. You know, because when they get up there and they do a skit, you know, they're not just doing just a parody of a show, they're doing it with love. You know, it makes sense for these characters to do and say these things, and that's why it's so funny, you know, in a lot of respects, because it's like, yeah, that's, you know, Barnabas, or you know, because it makes sense in that world, you know, and it's very much done with love.
The first festival I attended in 2000, I got to see the Consport players. They did The Spy Who Bit Me. It was an Austin Powers crossover with Dark Shadows. Richard Halpern was Austin Powers, of course. Just as you said, the jokes that they made in the skit are things that we recognize as fans that nobody else would get. So seeing that made public up on stage, somebody's actually saying this thing out loud, that's what makes it even funnier. I also saw his videos of the baby Dark Shadows that he made with his nephews, and same thing. The jokes that they're doing in those videos are exactly the same things that people joke about when they watch the show. But it's not done, as you said, it's not done to mock the show. It's done with love. It's done to celebrate and to wink and nudge. Oh yeah, there's that fly again. There's that Afghan blanket again.
Mm-hmm.
Fans will know what you mean. I love that secret language that the fans have, little references we can make. Like, I don't understand. Everybody will know what that means. Everybody will laugh at that. People on the outside will just kind of scratch their heads. What kept me coming back year after year at the conventions was the fans, seeing their creativity, having the chance to mingle with other fans. I didn't have anybody to watch the show with me or to discuss the show as I was discovering it. After about a year of watching it, I finally went online. I'm kind of a technophobe, so I an email or dealing with the internet up until that point. That's what pulled me out, because I didn't have any fans around me to talk to. I had to go into cyberspace and talk to people on the East Coast and people in Texas and people who lived hundreds of miles away. But I did it, and seeing the fans' enjoyment of the show, their celebration of the show through their own creativity, whether it's the skit or a gala performance or fan videos. Another thing I love to see was the music videos that fans put together. I know Guy Haynes has done a number of them, where you coordinate a popular song to scenes from the show. I loved seeing that. Again, my 2000 festival, the first set of videos that I saw, they were by a fan who went by Main Girl online. They were Willie centric, sports, a country song, and she had scored it to scenes of him with Maggie in Barnabas's prison, where he's trying to comfort her, and he's not supposed to. The chorus was when the wolf is howling underneath the moon, and every time it said that, she'd cut to a scene of Barnabas raising his cane, and perfect symbolism, perfect fit. I love seeing how people brought out elements of the characters or elements of the stories through the songs that they chose. And I wish that the festivals had given the fans more of a platform. We did have the gala, but most of the programming was centered on the actors, as you said. So one of the things I really love about your podcast is that you do give the fans to talk about what they love and how they share their love for the show. I love hearing from the fans. I want to separate the fans.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I really wanted to do is I wanted to put up some of those music videos, and I can't because of copyright, because I've tried and it won't let me. And then I have to re-edit the whole episode. And especially I think the last episode of the one before, my friend Deborah has made some great music videos, and so I tried to put those up, wouldn't do it because of the copyright. So it's like I can only put up my own Dark Shadows music because I own the copyright, so I don't seem to have a problem with that. So if anybody wants to make music videos to my Dark Shadow songs, go ahead, because apparently that's all I can load.
What you could do, you could just put up the video mute and then tell people, okay, go home and play this song now, coordinate it, and you can get the music experience at home. But yeah, that's
Yeah, but I know there would be people kind of complaining like, well, there's no sound, and it's okay, you know.
I would love to see her videos.
Well, I just made a music video yesterday for one of my, it's not one of my Dark Shadow songs, but it is through the Discount Artificial Sweetener music that I do. And it's actually a song I wrote for my rock opera that I've been working on for the last 4 years. And so I made a music video to that. It took me all freaking day. I had to use every kind of app or a program that I could use for kind of AI video kind of thing to try to get it to be like consistent. And it's not perfect, but it was the best that I could do. And it's like, okay, so at least I kind of got my vision out there for the song. And I know that AI is a it's a big thing with a lot of the fans. You love it or you hate it, because especially in a lot of Dark Shadows groups, you'll have a lot of retouched photos or things like that. And some of them are done beautifully, and some of them, they don't look like who they're supposed to be at all. And so I can see, yeah, so I can see why, people, have issues with that. But, one thing about AI is it gives people a tool to create that they may not have otherwise. For people who can't draw, for people who can't, play a musical instrument like me, or, anything like that, we can use AI programs to get our voices out there and to get our visions out there and create art. I try to use actual artists for my album covers when I can. Malia Shockley has made some gorgeous covers for me that I've commissioned. Dean Monahan's made a few of them, but they're not always available. They're not always taking commissions. So in those instances, it's like I gotta use AI because I can't freaking draw. The best picture I ever drew is that picture I drew of Nancy Barrett, and I put it up, I think, on one of the episodes in the gallery. And I think that's probably the best drawing of a person I've ever made because I'm not an artist. But I still had people, when I showed it to them, who's that? It's Nancy Barrett, and they couldn't tell who it was. It was like, oh man, I thought it looked like her.
I can sympathize. I hired a professional artist, a wonderful Canadian artist, Francois Viancourt, to do my cover for In the Shadow of the Skull, but I'm not to hire an artist right now. And I can't draw either. I only stick figures, which might fit a different type of book, but for Innocent, I did arts and crafts. I found pictures online of different objects, and I printed them and I cut them out and I glued them together and made a collage in elementary school, and that was my cover. So it's good that you're able to pursue your vision in a way that your own limitations wouldn't allow you to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't believe people should knock art in any medium. People express themselves in different ways. People are able to create in different ways, and especially if you think about people who maybe have disabilities that couldn't do certain things without the use of AI. It kind of really makes you think about it in a different way. Like, this is a tool to help people. Is it annoying? Sometimes. Does it look real? Sometimes not. Is it perfect? No. But, I don't get all the hatred for it that I've seen on a lot of Dark Shadows groups.
I think some of it has to do with the resources that are needed to power AI, because it's should I say it's a fad? It's got a moment right now where everything is AI. I think that's going to settle eventually, and maybe it won't often as it is. But I know that there's concerns about the effect on the environment of using AI, and I think if people stop using it for lazy things, like there are tools to have AI reply to your email right now.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, if you're using it for, as you said, as an aid, if you have disability and you can't do something on your own, you need the AI to help you, or if you need it to finesse an artistic project that you're using, that's different from, I'm going to have AI write my school application essay. I'm going to have AI do my research for this article I need to write. Stop using it as a crutch and use it as an aid. I think that will make it less where it's not being used as often. It's not going to suck up as many resources anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I had another question and I forgot it. It just, but I had a question and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. But I think it had to do with um nope. It's gone. Do you have any questions?
Oh, so you had said that when you started watching Dark Shadows, you didn't have very many other people in your generation. That was my experience too. So I think that we connected early on is because we are of the similar age, and we didn't get to run home from school. Did you find when you were watching the show? I think you had said you had finished high school by then.
Yeah, it was the summer I finished high school. So it would have been June of 2002, I think. Was channel surfing, and here's this gorgeous man in Victorian attire. And I remember exactly what episode it was. It was one with Abe Vigoda, and he had come to the house, and I was like, "What is this? Is this a movie? Is this a T?" I didn't know what it was, and but I was just hooked, and I wanted more.
Now, did your coworkers or the people that you were hanging out with at the time, did they think you were strange for liking this old show? Because I would talk about it at school. I started watching it in high school, and I would tell my friends about it in the hopes that someday one of them would watch it, and no
Mhm.
go. Uh,
Same thing with me, because I was recording the show at that point on VHS tapes because I didn't want to miss it because I'd go grocery shopping with my mom like in the morning and I'd be like, but I'm gonna miss Dark Shadows and I don't want I want to know what happens because I remember especially during like the 1897 storyline which I loved, and of course you had to really kind of follow to what was going on, and so I was taping every day. And like I remember going to the grocery store and I'm telling her all about what had happened and there was this magical hand in a box and and people were kind of like, give and she was good, and it's like she was tuning me out. She wasn't because she had watched the show in high school, but I mean she wasn't like super into it. But I mean, just the looks I would get walking through the grocery store, and you're talking about these things that you've seen, and people are like, what is wrong with that girl? A lot of strange looks and double takes.
yeah, because it is often a very complex plot, it's hard to tell somebody about it, hard to get them interested. And there were a few rare occasions when somebody would agree to watch a few episodes, and I have to think, what do I show them? What's going to be interesting, but that won't confuse them as to who everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I felt pretty isolated because I didn't have anybody else to share the enthusiasm. My friends would kind of patiently listen, but they weren't into it.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom had also been the Dark Shadows fan. She's the one who introduced me to it. And she would come in and stick her head in sometimes and watch what would happen. And she also read the companion that Catherine wrote, but it's not the same. You want somebody you can sit around the water cooler and speculate about what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So I did feel pretty lonely at that stage, and finding the internet and finding all the fan groups helped with that, but it's still not quite the same as having other people around you. So I do envy the people who got to see the show originally, and when it was popular enough that you could go to school and talk about it on your lunch break, or you'd have friends to act out the scenes with you, because everybody was watching Dark Shadows at the time. Everybody knew what it was, and now they don't.
Yeah, I mean, even now, I mean, even though I'm older and I work around, kind of like older people, a lot of them don't know really what it is because they're kind of in that in between kind of generation where they're not old enough to remember, but they're not, where they could have seen like the '91 series or anything like that. So they're just kind of like, oh yeah, that vampire thing, and it's like, but it's not all about vampires, and they just go, and they don't get it. Like even yesterday at work, oh my gosh, yesterday at work, I'm making coffee at the coffee machine, and one of my coworkers had come up and, oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, you still doing your podcast? Yeah, yeah. It's that what's that show, that dark thing? Dark Shadows. Oh yeah, they don't know.
Yeah, at the time there was a UFO show called Dark Skies on TV, and one of my friends thought I was a fan of Dark Skies. And no, it's Dark Shadows. You got the dark part right.
Well, I got that a lot with What We Do in the Shadows because I hadn't seen it when it was on, and people were like, "Oh yeah, is that the vampire show you watched?" No, you know. But then after I started watching, I'm like, "This is really good. This is really funny. I really like this." So I bought the whole series and the movie, because it was hilarious.
The
But
movie.
they didn't get it, They just heard shadows and vampire, and it's like, no, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah. One time I went to a book club and I was wearing a sweatshirt from Seaview. It had a picture of the house on the cover. And they in the group had a guest visiting, and she brought her friend and her friend staring at me across the table. Is that a Dark Shadows picture? Yeah, you know the show. And so
Mhm.
then I'll run into somebody who knows it or who remembers it,
Mhm.
but not as often.
Mhm.
I was on a couple of years ago. I was on a bus ride, and there were two people sitting near me. They were youngish, maybe in their 20s. Somehow they were talking about soap opera Port Charles, the spin-off
Mhm.
that had vampires, and one of them was talking about Port Charles, and then the one said, "Oh yeah, wasn't there another show with vampires and witches in the '90s? Passions. Oh yeah, that was where it must have started." And I wanted to jump in and say, "You're both wrong. It was Dark Shadows that started all the paranormal soap operas."
Well,
But
one of
even
the
kind of surprising because they were young enough that they probably were not watching Passions when it first aired, but they knew of it, just didn't know
Mhm.
far enough back.
Yeah, one of the coolest things that ever happened to me was I had a psychic reading, right? And this was several months after Judy had passed. And I had one of her buttons in my pocket. And it was one of her Seaview buttons. And I said, well, let me just take this, and we'll see what happens. And I didn't say anything, didn't give him any information. And I walked in, and the lady who was doing the reading, she goes, oh, you got a fun lady with you, you know. And she says, I keep getting these visions, or I forget what word she used. She's like, but there are these parties, there are these wonderful parties, and everybody's having a great time, and you're at this big house by the ocean, and she's with you even now at these parties, and she's coming to the parties, and she says, and you're going to be too young to remember this, but it looks like this house that was on a show called Dark Shadows. And I took out the button and I went, do you mean? And she went, that's the one. And I said, it is the house from Dark Shadows. So that was awesome, and that was amazing validation. Yeah, so that's the coolest kind of thing that has ever really happened to me with Dark Shadows and all of that was really freaking cool.
Really cool. Wow.
Hmm.
I bet I haven't had any experiences like that that could be termed paranormal. Um, The closest thing that happened to me, I was in San Diego at the Whaley House, which has a reputation for being haunted. And I was there for the ghost tour in August. That's supposedly the most active time. We were sitting in the front room, which is made up to look like a courtroom because the owner of the house had been a judge.
Mm-hmm.
When we went on the tour, they gave us all little keychain flashlights, first of all. And
Mm-hmm.
in the room, I'm looking over at the jury area where all the chairs are lined up, and I saw a ball of light rise up from the back. And at first I thought somebody was shining their flashlight, but it had more dimension to it. It didn't look like a flat circle the way a flashlight does. And
Mm-hmm.
it rose up and it came toward us, and then it disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this, I've been taking a picture, so I saw it on my phone. I didn't see it with my naked eye, I saw it through the phone. We're going through the house, and there's another couple on the tour, and they're whispering to each other in the kitchen, and the guy turns and says, "Oh, did you see the blue light?" And like, oh, that's what it was. So it's not a hallucination. It wasn't a flashlight. There is something here, and the tour guide knows about it, and these other people too. We went upstairs. They have a room where the family used to put on theatricals, made it like a little stage. Right
Mm-hmm.
after that, there were lots of blue lights flying around on the camera. I couldn't see them with my eye, but they were up there. So
Yeah, there's a man up there in the theater. Yeah, I've been to the Whaley House,
okay.
and I've been up in the theater, and I felt there's a man in the theater, and he's not part of the family, but I think he has something to do with the theater, and I've felt him in the theater there. I've seen a woman walking around outside. There's like a garden,
Yeah.
and around out there. Mhm. And you and I had dinner in Old Town.
Yes.
Right.
And the next nearby.
Yeah, and when we were sitting at the restaurant, I kept feeling something because we were sitting like here was the restaurant, and down that way was like the way,
Walk away.
and
And
I kept feeling energy like coming from over there. That was interesting when you're trying to eat enchiladas. Yeah, but yeah, because I was gonna say like, didn't we go to the Whaley House? But we didn't go inside. We walked by. Yeah. Yeah, so that was interesting. Sometimes I have these weird ass experiences going places, and I never know what's going to happen. I went to the Winchester Mystery House. Do you remember when I was briefly engaged to that guy, Gene?
yes.
Okay. Well, we were in San Jose because his nephew was living in San Jose, and we said, well, let's go to the Whaley House. Okay. Or the Whaley House, the Winchester Mystery House. Okay, so we go, and I hadn't been there before. Apparently, my mom said we went like when I was a baby or something, but I have like no memory of this. So it was really my first time actually being in the house. And we're walking around the house, and I was okay. There's a staircase they call the switchback stairs. There's some weird energy. There's a certain point that for me it felt like I stuck my finger in a light socket. Yeah, so that was weird, and it only happened really on this one spot on the staircase, so I don't know what that was. And then we're walking in, we're on the tour, and with the Winchester House, you all have to stay together, and they cordon off the rooms behind you because you can get lost, you can get hurt, so you all have to stay together. And so we were walking through the part of this house that had been damaged by the 1906 earthquake, you know and I mean, you could see the damage that was like still in these rooms. There's like a fireplace that like went through the floor or something. I mean, it was crazy. And so I was in this room, and I guess it's the room that I think that she had been trapped in during the earthquake, is what they said, Mrs. Winchester. I don't know, whatever it was, but we were in that room, and as we left that room and walked into another room right before we left, because we're just looking around, there's this little old lady staring at me. And she was shorter than, and I'm, because we're both about 5 foot, so she was shorter than me. And she was just kind of looking at me, and she reminded me of like, one of those little Sicilian nanas, like black, And so I thought, oh, okay, hello, weirdo, like, why is she staring at me? And we walk into the next room, and you're all supposed to stay together. And I hadn't noticed this woman at any time, except for just I'd noticed her when I'm looking around. Okay, whatever. We walk into the other room, and the tour guide's putting the clip on the rope across the door. And I go, wait a minute, where'd that lady go? There's a little lady met this song. Nobody else saw this woman. They had no idea what I was talking about, and I saw her as plainly as I see you. And then they say, well, Mrs. Winchester was 4 foot or something. It's like, okay. You know, but that was weird because I don't have too many experiences where I'll see something and it looks like a living, breathing person. You know, very, very rarely does it happen. But that was one of those times and I didn't realize it. Yeah, you know. I mean, I've had all kinds of weird things I can't explain. I had a residual experience at Seaview. And apparently I'm the only person who's ever had this experience. I've never heard anybody have anything like this ever happen to them before. But you know that room downstairs? I guess it used to be a breakfast room or something. It's that room. Here's the dining room, and then it's on the other side, the one with the iron door.
Okay.
Right before the hallway with the piano.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I fell asleep on the couch. I think I was talking to Greg or something, and we were up talking for hours, like we would. And I fell asleep on the couch. Get up, everybody else is gone. I got to go to the bathroom. I'm like, okay, let me go to the bathroom, but I don't want to have to walk all the way upstairs. I'll walk down the hall, use one, down the hall, and then I'll go up or sleep on the couch or whatever. So I get up and I walk through the sunroom, through the hallway into that room, and there's people having a conversation. Now the light is off. It's dark. It's probably like 2 or 3 in the morning, something like that. And there are 2 men and they're talking and they're having a full-on conversation. And I didn't realize until I walked through the room, number one, I didn't see anyone. And number 2, it wasn't in English. And I really could have used you because I think it was French. That's what it kind of sounded like to me. I don't speak French. So I have no idea what the hell they were saying. But I went on to the you walk through the great hall and you turn the thing, you go to the bathroom, whatever. I turn around. When I came back, I said, well, let me take a look. And I walk through again and I hear them talking, plain as day. There's nobody in the room. I cannot see anyone in the room. I can't understand what the hell they're saying. It's another language and they're having a full-on conversation, totally ignoring me. And I'm like, hello? They're ignoring me. Okay. I walked through. I laid back on the couch. I'm like, I'm going back to bed. The fire was dying, so it was nice and warm. I'm just like, I'm gonna just lay right here. I'm gonna go back to bed. And in the morning, we were leaving, and I was Denise took me and Bob to the airport. And so I asked Denise. I said, Denise, do you have any boarders? Anybody who's renting a room that's maybe Canadian that would speak French? No. And I told her, I said, I walked through the room and there were these guys having this conversation and it sounded like French. And I don't know what they were saying. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't see anybody there. She says, well, that fireplace in the room was from France. They brought the fireplace over from France. So it's like, okay, it's residual. It's tied to the fireplace. That's what the hell this was. Yeah, nobody else that I know of has had that experience.
So you said that the first time you went to Seaview, you didn't know that there were ghosts there, and then you started to have some experiences.
Yeah.
You start to talk to other people and find out if they had experiences too.
Well, the very first thing was the man that said hello to me at the top of the stairs. When the first day when I got there, and at the top of the stairs off the Great Hall, there's like that minstrel gallery. There's up there. And I'm walking through, I was looking for Carol. I was looking for Carol and Ma because they were staying down in, I think they were in Josette's room there. I think that's where they were staying. So I'm walking down there to go say hey to Carol and Ma. And this man says, hello. Hello, there's nobody there. Look over the balcony. There's nobody there. There's nobody there. And this man plain as day said, hello. Hello. Turn around. Let me go find Carol. So that was the first thing. And the weird thing is that guy would say hello to me pretty much every time I went. He didn't the last time. I didn't hear him. I didn't feel him the last time I was there. But the few like first times that I went, he would say hello to me. I would actually feel him. We heard him actually. Carol Lawson and I were up there. We were talking or something, and she said, "Do you feel?" And I said, "Yeah, I feel something." And I said, "If there's anybody here, you want to come talk to us?" And we heard footsteps up that short flight of stairs right there that came up, and somebody walked right close to us. And there's nobody there. We didn't see anybody. But there's definitely a man up there. He's very protective. He's got very, like, I get military vibes from him. I don't know why. But he would walk up and down like doing patrols. Like he was doing his rounds, making sure everything's okay. And especially when I stayed in that room next to the tower room, because I'd hear him walking down the hall back and forth, and you'd hear him walking. And, you know, there's 2 doors in that room, and you can stick your head out the doors. There's nobody there. But you could hear him walking plain as day. And he felt very protective, and he actually saved me from falling down those stairs, because Jeannie and I had done we did a snack run. And so we went out and we went to, I don't know, CVS or Stop and Shop or something. I don't know. We got a bunch of snacks. So we're coming up the stairs, and I don't like coming up those stairs because there's no railing on the very top stair. I'm sure you've noticed that very top stair, there's no railing on the side. So I've got bags, and you know my balance isn't good. Well, sure enough, I'm coming up the stairs. I get to the top stair, and I feel myself falling backwards, and I can't even talk. I'm so scared because I'm going to fall backwards. I'm going to crack my head on this marble staircase, and I'm going to freaking die. And I was so scared that I couldn't even call out for Jeannie, because she went up ahead of me, and she went through the room. And I felt this hand on my back kind of push me back up to the stair. So I could kind of scramble over, and I crawled up that last stair. And I went, "Thank you." And she went, "Who are you talking to?" I said, the man that saved me from falling down the stairs. And she went, "What?" And I told her, and I said, "Yeah, I was 100% convinced I was going to die on this staircase, because I felt myself going backwards. I had nothing to grab onto. I was so scared I couldn't even talk. And the hand came up, and he saved me. And I've never had an experience like that before. You know, that was incredible. And I mean, he's one of the spirits that I would look forward to talking to and feeling anytime. I never saw him, but I would feel him. And especially the first few times I went, every single time, you know, I was there, hello, you know, say hello. And just, he felt very, very protective, very lovely, very, very nice man. As you know, compared to the thing in the wing down the hall. No, but yeah, he was very nice.
I'm glad he pushed you back up, because I like having you with us.
Yeah, because I thought, I'm going to be a ghost here in a minute. You know, I'm going to be haunting the staircase. Yeah, that was very, very scary. But I've seen a couple of them. I saw Mrs. Bradley. You know, she was the original owner's wife. I've seen her in the sunroom. One night, I fell asleep on the couch, and I was talking to Greg and some people. You know, because I remember we'd be sitting up there. You know, and they had the fire in the fireplace, and we just sitting, and one by one, everybody falls asleep. You know, and yeah, and you know, I woke up, and of course, I'm the only one there. Everybody's gone to bed. Even Carol had gone to bed, and she'd be usually the last one up. And the lights were off, but you know, you could see from the light of the fire, you know, because there's fire in the fireplace, you know. And I get up, and I thought, gee, I wonder what time it is. Where is everybody? I should go to bed, you know. And here comes this woman, and it wasn't like, you know, like a full-bodied apparition. It was like a shadow, but I knew it was a woman. And she came walking in from that doorway, you know, the hallway with the staircase right there. She walked in, and it's like she was looking at there was a table right there, and Helen had set up some stuff for the party and decorations and things. And I got this feeling that she's being a good hostess, because she's looking like, okay, everybody's got everything they need. Yes, that's very nice. That's lovely, kind of thing. Looking around, just very, that'll do, you know. And then she turned around and walked out. Didn't acknowledge me in any way, you know. but I saw this shadowy figure of a woman. I knew instinctively this is Mrs. Bradley because she gave this impression. This is my house. I'm making my rounds. I'm making sure this is good. This is satisfactory. This is, very much that lady of the house, the hostess kind of vibe. Yeah. And then Mr. Bradley was in the basement. I was down in the basement with Carrie's girls because they were working the haunted house down there that year, and so they were showing me. And somebody else, maybe it was Phil or somebody, I don't know, somebody else was down there. A couple of us were down there, but I remember I was with the girls, and we were just walking around and looking at the Halloween decorations and different things. And I just see this shadowy figure of a man just very quickly, just like, I don't know, he kind of like darted between, it was like two shelves or something. I don't know what it was, but he just kind of walked by very quickly. And I thought, oh, that's Mr. Bradley. That's that feeling I got. This is his basement. He's, puttering around or whatever he was doing, not really acknowledging any of us and our Halloween goofiness, over here. But yeah, so that was really cool. That was interesting. And those are the two that I've actually like seen. All the others I've just kind of felt, the little girl up on the third floor and the thing down in the wing above the kitchen. I will not go down that corridor. I can only go as far as the steps up and down to the kitchen. I can't go past that point anymore because somebody is watching me and it gives me the creeps and I will not go down any further. No, no, no. So I, try to stay out of that, part of the house. There's something on the third floor. I don't know who or what it is. I couldn't get any answers. But you know where Denise's room is on the third floor?
Not sure I know where that is.
Okay, well, so okay, Denise's room's on the second floor. That room right above, which is right there on the. I think Gay stayed there
Oh, okay. I remember her room.
at the top of the stairs. I don't know who or what's over there, but there's somebody over there. I felt them, and I don't know if it's the same person that walks down that hall because there's come like goes down that hall. The tower room. I was with Judy in the tower room, and something opened one of the drawers of the dresser, and that was interesting. And we heard footsteps and things up there.
Where the trees were thrown around the room one day. So yeah, I've heard other people say that part is active.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but every single floor there's something. Every single floor. In the organ room, it's not Mrs. Bradley in the organ room. I don't know what's in the organ room. It feels like a man, but it's not Mrs. Bradley in the organ room. That's for sure. And when we did the ghost hunt with Ashley,
Mhm.
Ashley, and Teresa was there and a couple other people, and we went ghost hunting, and that's the only room where we got any kind of like a EVP. And we asked because I think Diane got like pinched or hit or something in that room. I don't remember what it was. And somebody asked, do you know Diane or did you remember Diane or something? And there's a noise. It sounds kind of almost like a whimper. We don't know what the hell it is, but that is the only thing that we picked up on audio the whole time was in that room.
Sorry, I missed that. That would have been really cool.
Yeah, I don't know where you were.
I probably had to go home because for the longest time, I either didn't have vacation days or I didn't have the disposable income to stay more than a couple of days. So I usually come in red eye Thursday or Friday night and stay for a couple of days and then leave again. So I missed out on a lot of cool things. I know people went on excursions to see movies in town at the historic theater. One time I called in sick so I could stay the extra day and go to Belport with the. But yeah, I missed out on a lot of fun experiences.
Yeah, Belcourt was cool. That was a really cool experience. Yeah, a lot of cool memories. Oh, I know we won't get to go back anymore.
I don't wear my shirts anymore because it just hurts that I'm not going to get to go back again. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, maybe the new owner will take pity on us and invite us in one day, but it's not a fixed event on the calendar anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the last few years I didn't get to go because, my mom passed away, my dad was sick, I had money issues, and I kept trying, and I couldn't get back there, and 2016 was the last time I was there, and I kept trying and I could not get back there. Oh, I love that house. Even with all its ghosts, I love that house.
Just add to its charm.
Yeah, I mean, it's
About ghosts.
Yeah, definitely a unique place and a lot of great memories. Yep, and on that note, I should probably let you go here because what have we been talking about? 2 hours now?
Wonderful time, and thank you again for having me. And I've loved hearing your stories about the ghosts you've seen and heard, and about your experiences in fandom. I look forward to hearing more of your music coming up, I hope.
Yeah, I'll send you the video. Well, I posted the video on my Facebook, and I've got it up on this channel, my YouTube channel. I put it up last night, so if you want to check that out.
Will do. Thank you.
And I am so excited to read your new book. I kept looking for like a pre-order button or something,
I need to set that up. I have the proof that I showed you earlier. I need to go through and make sure that there's no glaring errors. And then when I approve that, then the button will appear. So I'll put that link out when it's available. But shooting for the release in early September of this year.
Okay.
It's at the 65th anniversary of the Innocents. That'll coincide with that release.
Very cool. I'm so excited for that, and I'm so excited for you, and I'm so proud of you. You are so awesome, and I love everything you do.
Thank you.
And I love you so much, and you are one of my oldest and dearest Dark Shadows cousins.
You. I love you too, and I'm so looking forward to seeing you again this summer, and we get together in LA for the big event. Been 2 years since I saw you, so
yeah, I don't have blue hair this time. Well, we'll make some new memories this summer, hopefully, and I will talk to you soon.
Well, take care. Thanks again, and I look forward to your new endeavors.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
I don't understand, and it's raining again. It seems so dreary here without my man. An impossible task to bring him back from the past, but we must be reunited again. I don't understand. No, I don't understand. I thought when they said that Burke was dead, that simply couldn't be the end. Then I went back in time, I sound out of my mind, but it happened, love happened, and he can't be dead. I don't understand, and it's raining again. It seems so dreary here without my man. An impossible task to bring him back from the past, but we must be reunited again. I don't understand. No, I don't understand. Peter and Jeff are one and the same, and I love him whatever his name. Just a bride of a day, and my groom's gone away into the past from whence he came. I don't understand, and it's raining again. It seems so dreary here without my man. An impossible task to bring him back from the past, but we must be reunited again. I don't understand. No, I don't understand. I don't understand, and it's raining again. It seems so dreary here without my man. An impossible task to bring him back from the past, but we must be reunited again. I don't understand. No, I don't understand. Here I found a home, but now I feel so alone. I can't forget or move on from my man. I know he's here in some way, and I can't just stay in a time without him again. I don't understand, and it's raining again. It seems so dreary here without my man. An impossible task to bring him back from the past, but we must be reunited again. I don't understand. No, I don't understand.
This is Amanda Desiree, who is performing a song parody of the 1968 Dream Curse storyline. Oh, come on, Amanda.
Hear the words, your future's bleak. By morning you will weep, because once you fall asleep, you will dream the dream. You can't resist the spell, as you will find. If you try to break the chain, your fear will drive you insane. Oh, the dream, curse, dream curse. I'm knocking at your door like so many times before. Your visitor on this particular night. Lead you to your doom in a mist-filled room, where you're in for a terrible fright. A head blazing like just burned, and one door raised, point of return. The trial and error side found a faceless terror. It's the dream. The dream curse, dream curse. It consumes your every thought, ties your stomach in a knot, and with each night that passes by, the terror will increase. You will never have peace, for the next time you dream you could die. Cobwebs, ghouls, bats, your tombstone, a guillotine, a headless body, a skeleton bride, and a skull glowing green. Bring it right up the wall. Give Professor Stokes a call to stop the dream. Dream curse, dream. Dream curse, dream.
That was Amanda Desiree. You know what inspirationalist is. As I said, you can see we have fans of all ages, so many of us were children ourselves. Number 6.
Back in our neighborhood next door, the evil spirit is burying half the garden. The neighbor next door, they dug a hole and put a plant around and inside it. Who knows what they buried there? And I wish that Dr. Huffman would find a cure. I love to see the daylight again. Magda, the evil spirit, loves belly dance. It originated in Egypt. Listen, how can we make the evil spirit happy again? Josette, Angelique put a curse on Barnabas. Is there a chance to cure him by giving him shots? Magda, one way is to have the Dark Shadows Festival. Angelique, the evil spirit loves belly dancing music and dancing, and is happy in Egypt. Why don't we have a festival there?
That was Alice Faye Landis. Thank you, Alice.
Welcome home, cousin. Welcome.
The Back Room at the Blue Whale is a Dark Shadows podcast.